morning. Welcome to Law Power Hour. Today we're very, very fortunate to have one of the premier workers' disability compensation and veterans lawyers, Mr. Joel Alpert, with us. Joel, thanks for coming.
It's my privilege and honor to be here.
Well, you know, there's so many changes that have gone on in the area of workers' disability compensation in this state. It's overwhelming, the changes that have occurred. I remember when I started 50 years ago, if somebody bent over to get a file out of the file drawer and they hurt their back when they stood up, they could draw workers' disability compensation. Today, they wouldn't be able to draw a nickel for that, would they?
Oh, likely they wouldn't. We should probably explain what workers' disability compensation is, though.
Well, that would be helpful. Why don't you lean in here a little bit? You've got a nice soft-spoken voice. But I want our listeners, if you're not awake yet and you're just getting up, I want you to wake up and listen to this, or you're going to watch it on YouTube later because this is really important. What is workers' disability compensation?
So the only claim you can have against an employer for a work injury is for workers' comp. You cannot sue for pain or suffering. There's no jury trial. But it doesn't matter whose fault the injury is. If you're injured at work, you're disabled, and you lose wages, you get workers' comp. That's the way that's been in Michigan for over 100 years. That's the way the law is in all 50 states. You cannot sue your employer for pain or suffering.
Now, today, even though that's what we call the exclusive remedy, the only remedy that you have, are there other things that you can do? In other words, you could sue for sexual harassment, you could sue for employment discrimination, which would be outside of workers' comp, correct?
Yeah, there are some special laws, some special statutes to provide for certain types of claims against an employer that don't necessarily arise out of a personal injury. Certain things are prohibited by the law, like age, race, or sex discrimination, and you can have claims for that. But we're talking about, as you said, an injury where somebody bends over and picks up something, injures their back, and becomes disabled as a result, or other sorts of injuries, falls, crushing injuries, specific events rather than something that happens over a course of time like a sexual harassment claim.
But today there's a minefield out there. I mean, it's just like you're in the combat zone trying to get through the minefield to get workers' compensation. Isn't that true?
It's not only true in Michigan, but it's true across the entire country. There's a race that's called a race to the bottom to see who can give the lowest or least meaningful benefits and still maintain a system where there's some coverage for injured workers. The benefits that are being offered across the country are being cut, reduced, and eliminated. It's just incredible what's been happening to workers over the last several decades.
So let me ask you an important question. How do you handle this situation? I come into your office. I hurt my back, but I've had surgery on my back before, and I say to you, Mr. Alpert, I hurt my back at work. And my employer says they're not going to pay me because I hurt my back before, and there's nothing new about my condition except my back's sore. What are you going to do for me?
It's an interesting conundrum. They changed the law several years ago. Our Supreme Court just made stuff up. It wasn't written into the law. They made it up to make it harder to get these benefits. And they added a provision that says that you have to have what's called objective evidence to prove your claim. So as an example, if you say my arm hurts, there's really no way to prove that just based upon what you say. You have to be believable. But if you take an x-ray and you see a broken bone, you know that that's associated with pain. So that's objective evidence, the x-ray. So I don't want to just keep running on and on.
No, that's okay, because I had a question to ask you about that. Suppose they do an x-ray, and don't smack me after the show, but I've got to ask you this. If they don't find a broken bone, but they see that I have some spurs and arthritic changes in my elbow, and they say, well, you're just getting old, Mr. Keller. We don't want to pay you. How do you handle that?
I'm not going to comment on your age.
No, but I'm talking about how do you handle it?
Well, it's just one of the things. You have to show that the pathology, the problem in that joint that you're talking about in the elbow or wherever else the injury might be is caused by or related to the injury. And it's very difficult. They want you to prove that there's been a change in pathology, but most people don't have an x-ray before the injury and an x-ray after the injury so that you can compare them, and it's almost an impossible standard that they've created.
I mean, given the fact that hard-working, industrious, responsible individuals put in 20, 25 years on a job, then they slip and fall, and they get hurt, and their insurance carrier or their employers, if they're self-insured, look at them and say, "You're just getting old." Is that right?
That's what happens. And surprisingly, this is what my clients are almost always surprised to find this out. There's no requirement in the law that your employer bring you back to work after you've healed from your injury. They can fill your position after you've been injured.
Well, what if I belong to a union?
Well, okay. Then you're covered by a contract, and whatever the contract says controls as long as you have a good union.
And if you don't have a good union, you're out the door.
There's a legal term for that. SOL.
Well, you're out of luck, unfortunately. Now, getting back to the situation, I'm working, I work for 25 years, there's no union because we changed our laws in Michigan again. You don't need to belong to a union to work. You can just go in and be a free rider. But if you get hurt, you sure want the protection of the union, don't you?
Of course. Unions are important. It's unfortunate that they've lost so much power in the state.
The bedrock of America, labor unions. They're the ones who put things in order in place for even the injured workers. That's true, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Now they've eviscerated or taken away those rights. So I get hurt, and I'm working out here 25 years, and it's really important. Then I get better, and they don't have a job for me. What am I supposed to do to feed my family? What's your answer?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Yeah, it is.
There's really no answer to that.
I got to go out and find another job, or let's say I can't go back to my former job. Let's walk through one of these cases together. I get hurt, I come to your office. And by the way, where's your office located?
We're in Southfield on Northwestern Highway.
And give us your telephone number so people can call you.
It's 248-354-6400, and the address is 29566 Northwestern Highway.
So let's say that I get hurt and I come into your office and I say, you know, I'm working for ABC Grinding. We won't even tell you what kind of grinding work they're doing. And I've been there for 20 years and I slip and fall at work. And you interview me, right? Tell me what's going to happen.
You give me your initial information. I get the specifics about what's happening, but you mentioned grinding, and that made me think of lung cases, but we'll get to that.
Well, yeah, we'll get, but that's part of it. That's why I use the grinding, because I want you to get to everything. So my employer says, you know, Mr. Keller, we sent you to the clinic, and it's nothing too bad, just arthritis. So I want to go back to work. Employer says, well, we don't have a job for you anymore. What am I supposed to do?
Let me back up, because you raise a bunch of issues there. First one is that the law now says that for the first 28 days after an injury, you have to go to the doctor that's chosen for you by the employer or their insurance company. If you go to any other doctor, they don't have to pay for it.
I mean, I can't go to my primary care physician. I've got to go to one of these quote-unquote company doctors.
You can go, but you'll have to pay for it yourself.
Okay, do they have to pay me benefits after 28 days if I'm still disabled?
Well, when you go to these company clinics, the treatment that you get is minimal, and the way I think about it is, if they look for a problem, they might find one, and they don't want to find a problem. So the treatment that you get at these clinics is minimal. And occasionally, don't get me wrong, most of the work injuries are minor. You can cut yourself, you go get a few stitches, you go back to work. That's a workers' compensation claim. But it's really insignificant when you compare that to the catastrophic claims that we see where people fall 30 feet and become paraplegics or quadriplegics. There's a big difference there. And you don't generally run into a problem with the more minor type injuries. That's basically where these company clinics come in with the minor type injuries. And if it gets more complicated, if the injuries are more serious, then you're really not getting the treatment that you need.
And it's like being on a merry-go-round after that, because they'll send you from one doctor to the next doctor, won't they?
I have a case going on right now against one of the local hospitals. And my client's claiming disability as a result of a work injury and had been treating with one of the doctors at that hospital. The hospital decided to dispute the claim and say that they're not going to pay benefits. And rather than use one of their own doctors, they sent my client to a doctor that they hired who's not even in their system, who's not qualified or authorized to work for that hospital, to examine my client to say there's nothing wrong with her.
They call them the old hired gun.
The hired gun.
Okay, and so they found her not disabled, correct?
Well, the treating doctor says that there's a work-related disability, and the defense doctor, the doctor hired by the insurance company, the insurance arm of the hospital, says, oh, there's no problems, and if there are any problems, they're, as you indicated before, all related to arthritis and old age. It has nothing to do with the employment.
So what's your client supposed to do?
Well, when there's a dispute like that, when you think you're entitled to benefits, and your employer says you're not, there's a workers' compensation agency set up by the state of Michigan where there are judges, magistrates, and the workers' compensation judge can determine who's right and who's wrong.
Now, if you go before a judge, statistically, what's the win-loss ratio? I want our listeners to hear this, and I know some of you are going to watch this later in the day. What's the percentage of wins if they go to trial?
So if you're sitting in a computer and you type in the number 94 and then the percent sign, and then the word solution, 94% solution, in my name, Joel Alpert, you'll find an article that will come up that was published by me and my business partner, Richard Warsh, and it discusses the statistics that were gathered by another attorney who's referenced in the article. And it's been published statewide and nationally because it's so shocking. Basically, what the article says is over a period of years, about 1 out of every 3 people who went to trial before a workers' compensation judge in the last several years in the state here would win their case. 2 out of 3 would lose. And then the cases are appealed to the Michigan Compensation Appellate Commission. It's staffed by a bunch of political appointees, as are the magistrates, and that's not to impugn their integrity, but certain philosophical bent, if you will, is found at the commission.
Let's be straightforward about it. They're Republican appointees, and their thinking is all for employers. The chairperson of the appellate commission was a workers' disability compensation defense lawyer for the big 3 and handled all their appellate work. So let's be straightforward.
I'm trying to be nice.
Well, you don't have to be nice. You have to be truthful here.
I'm being truthful.
I'm not going to call him by his last name, George, but I've known him for years. He's happened to be a very nice person, but he's an appointee who has the employer's best interest, like the governor has the employer's best interest, like the president of the United States has the employer's best interest with his new tax reform program that's made billions of dollars for corporations. So we're at the mercy of Republicans right now, aren't we?
There is a certain political philosophy that affects everything that happens to to injured workers.
You're being nice about it, but it's always been that way, hasn't it?
I deal with them every day. But yes, and the pendulum swings both ways, but it's really swung way far to the right now, and it's been there for a long time. But I didn't finish talking about the Appellate Commission.
Okay.
So over a period of years, the statistics at the Appellate Commission show, and this is shocking, 94% of the people who had a favorable decision will have their award of benefits either taken away or a denial of benefits affirmed. So only about 6% of the people who go up on appeal with their case will come out with a full award of benefits. So 94% of the people who are injured, who end up going through a trial in the appeals process, lose.
So the solution is at the ballot box. Let's really get straightforward about this.
Oh, absolutely. Getting out the vote is really
Right.
important.
And we have lazy individuals who don't vote. We all have to suffer the consequences. And that's unfortunately what's been going on in Michigan. It's been going on nationally because no one is willing to step forward and get out of the house and go vote.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that feel powerless and they don't think that their vote will count, but every vote does count. And if we just had a few more votes, if there was one more vote, I believe in every precinct for Hillary Clinton in the last presidential election, we would have had a different president.
Well, there's an old saying, dumb sheep don't drink water. So take that home and think about it. Because if you ain't drinking the water, you're not out there voting. You're not getting the job done. Now back to your story, because this is really important. So we're at the sufferance, all of us are at the sufferance of a bunch of crazy laws today. Even if you get hurt at work, you're locked in that, aren't you?
There's no question. In fact, however, I had an attorney in my office, and he went to the office supply store, and he needed a new chair. And the chair was up on a high shelf, so he called for help, and the office supply store sent a woman who was about 4'10" to help him get this chair from 10 feet up, and she really couldn't help him. She wasn't equipped. So my attorney reached above his head. Well, it wasn't, so it was only 6 feet up or 7 feet up. Reached above his head, grabbed the chair, and as he was twisting and bringing it down, he herniated a disc in his back. So we had a workers' compensation claim filed against us, and we did everything in our power to make sure that the workers' compensation insurance company paid for all of his medical care. He didn't miss time from work other than a few days, so we paid him even though he was off work. We felt so bad that here he is working for us, and now he's got a permanent injury.
Okay? But that's not the norm.
No, it's not the norm. The
And-
norm is he won't work, he won't get paid, and he'll have a fight with the insurance company.
And one of the biggest problems we have today is that many of these employers use hiring services, personnel groups,
I
whatever you
can't
call
tell you.
them.
I can't tell you how many people come into my office and they don't even know who their employer is.
And that's a big problem, isn't it?
Sure, it is. Identify the employer.
Yeah.
If you can't identify your employer, you can't make a claim.
No, so they'll work for XYZ personnel, and I'm being polite on the air. And what happens is they don't know that XYZ personnel has a contract with ABC Manufacturing. And part of the contract is they get paid for managing all the claims and managing all of the unemployment issues and all the other issues for the employees. Is that correct?
That's correct, and it wouldn't matter how negligent ABC grinding, you got to get back to the grinding, is, even though they're hired by XYZ employment agency, ABC is immune. That means they cannot be sued for negligence because they're also considered to be the employer.
Right, because the law says that if you work through one of these hiring agencies and you're contracted with the employer, all of the defenses that are available to The hiring agency, as I understand it, are also available to the employer, correct?
Absolutely, and we've got something called MIOSHA, which is supposed to be investigating these work injuries, and they're overburdened. They can't do all the work that they need to do, and employers sometimes get fined for these horrible injuries that happen to their workers, and the fines end up getting negotiated and reduced and become insignificant.
There is a small provision in the law and workers' disability compensation laws that allows you to sue your employer if you are retaliated at work. Isn't that true for making a claim?
Yeah, there's a provision in the law regarding workers' compensation discrimination. You cannot discriminate against somebody because they filed a claim for workers' compensation benefits. However, I've been doing this 40 years. I don't think I've ever seen anybody succeed in a case like that.
And neither have I.
There's another provision regarding intentional injuries. If your employer intends for you to be injured, this is the basic premise. It's not the words from the law. But if your employer intends for you to be injured, you can sue the employer. I liken it to if your supervisor punches you in the nose, you're not limited to workers' comp. Those cases are very difficult to prove. We've had cases where employers have taken guards off of machines, and the guards are there to protect the workers from injury, but if you use the guard, it slows up production. If you take it off, it speeds up production. So the employers take off the guard so they can make more money, and the worker gets injured because the guard's not there. And the courts have said, well, that's just negligence. You can't sue your employer for taking the guard off the machine.
Now I'm going to take you back to ABC grinding, because that's where we were when we first started talking about getting injured. And if I worked there for 25 years, they tell me I don't have a claim for my arm when I fall. But if they do a chest x-ray and they find out I've got something going on in my chest, could I have a claim?
Occupational diseases that you get as a result of your employment, are covered by the law. They're very difficult to prove because with your arthritis example, they'd say, well, yeah, we see you've got a problem with your lungs, but you were a smoker, or you smoked for 2 years, 40 years ago, so all these problems that you have in your lungs are related to your own habits or from breathing pollution somewhere else and have nothing to do with your work in a grinding booth for 25 years. And that's how they defend those cases.
We're going to take a break for a minute. I'm going to come back because I've got a series of issues I want you to discuss in your last 10 minutes on the air. We'll be right back.
Are you in legal trouble? Are you in need of legal advice? Or just have general legal questions? Call 1-800-529-8721. That's 1-800-LAW-USA1. And watch Law Power Hour and get your questions answered by experienced attorneys who are experts in their field. That's Law Power Hour, hosted by Barry Keller, attorney at law. Saturdays at 10 a.m. here on WHPR Detroit Live.
We're back with Attorney Joe Alpert. Joe, tell everyone how to get a hold of you.
We're in Southfield on Northwestern Highway. Our phone number is 248-354-6400.
And we were talking about work-related injuries before we took a break. And you were talking about a situation if I get hurt at work and I can no longer work at my job, and my employer says, you know, Barry, we don't have a job for you. What am I supposed to do? What's the law require me to do?
Oh, you just open up a big can of worms.
Well, I'm sorry, but we've got to talk about this on the air because no one ever believes the attorneys, do they?
So
Do they believe us when we tell them?
they
Gotta
don't
go
want to
get it.
believe us because sometimes the news that we give them is so bad.
Well, let's hear the can of worms news.
So the law says that you have to prove that you're disabled. That disability doesn't mean that you just can't go back and do the job you were doing at the time of the injury. It means that you can't do any job that would allow you to make as much money as you were making at the time of the injury. And now our lawmakers have come up with something just incredible in my mind. You're claiming, when you file a claim with the Workers' Comp Agency, that you're disabled, but they now are requiring you to look for work. You're claiming you can't work, but they require you to look for work, and if you don't look for work, you can't get your workers' compensation benefits. So say you had been making $15 an hour on a job, and you can't do that anymore because it's too strenuous. Say you've even got skills or high skills and you're making $25 or $30 an hour and you can't do those anymore, you can't use your skills. The way they interpret the law now is you have to look for a job, and the way I describe it is they want you to look for a job and they don't care if it's on the midnight shift at Burger King, or Taco Bell's the one that's open all night, isn't it? So they don't care if it's the job on the midnight shift and it pays you minimum wage. If you don't take it, you don't get workers' comp. Does that make sense?
It doesn't make sense to me, but that's the test they use today.
Then what happens is, if you do find the job, they reduce your workers' comp benefit by your earnings.
And if I work at that for 5 years, I'm in real quicksand. Is that true?
Yeah, because then they've decided that you've established a new wage earning capacity, which means that your benefits will be reduced permanently by the wages that you were earning or you've shown that you can earn in this job on the midnight shift at Taco Bell.
And incidentally, we're not minimizing the job at Taco Bell because we think people should be paid more money working at fast food services.
Oh, absolutely. We've got Walmart now raising wages to $11 an hour, and I'm hopeful that many of our service workers will get the raises that they deserve.
Yeah, because they're the ones who really have a very, very difficult job. There's a lot of physical activity in working as a service worker.
So several years ago, the state of Michigan was facing a lot of protests about low wages and increasing the minimum wage. And there's national conversation now about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. There was talk of a referendum in Michigan, an initiative to get a law passed to raise it to $15 an hour in Michigan. So you know what our legislature did? They went and passed a law to raise the minimum wage just in small increments and small amounts over several years, so that the minimum wage is going up just a little bit rather than the threat of the minimum wage being increased by a lot.
Yeah, so the impact, the corporations are making more money with all these new tax gimmicks that the Trump administration's come up with, and the workers aren't benefiting unless they work for a labor union that has profit sharing.
The rich get richer.
Well, that's one of the problems, but the problem with workers in the workplace getting injured is that their whole life has changed from the day they get injured. That's the big problem. The first 90 days following an injury are the worst 90 days, aren't they?
Absolutely, and the employer can just use you up and throw you out.
And everything changes because no one's prepared for an injury. I'm being very serious about this. I've never met anybody who was prepared to be injured. Have you?
No, and it affects not only the injured worker, it affects their family, their friends. I've got an injured worker right now. He can't care for himself 100%, and when his wife is not there to care for him, his friend comes over to help him out and get from the chair to the toilet or in and out of the house because he can't do it himself.
Okay, but there is a provision in the law for that, and I'm glad you brought it up. Attendant care.
Very difficult to get in Michigan. Very limited for injured workers.
I had a lady who fractured her pelvis, and she couldn't get up the stairs after she came home from the hospital. And her daughters had to take care of her. So I made a claim for attendant care. It's 56 hours a week is the maximum. Is that correct?
That's the maximum that the insurance company has to pay family members.
Right. So we were able to negotiate it out for 4 hours a day for 3 months, which was a very unique situation. But fortunately, her treating doctor wrote the script for it, and no one challenged it. But under normal circumstances, if your neighbor comes over to help you, you're going to get paid for that?
Most of the time, no.
But if they come to your office, are you going to advocate for a person to get attendant care?
Absolutely. But Rita, I'd like to talk about this.
Okay, we've got a couple minutes left, and we want to talk about independent medical examinations, which you alluded to when you said, if I get hurt at work, I've got to go to the clinic. But that's not an independent medical examination, is it?
I don't think any of them are really truly independent. It's a name that they've given to examinations that are scheduled by insurance companies for defense of the workers' compensation claim.
Okay, so there are doctors out there who specialize in examining claimants for employers and insurance companies, correct?
Absolutely.
And-
Some of them do nothing else.
And what kind of money do they make?
Well, I've got some numbers here that we got from a lawsuit was filed, and the insurance company hired this one doctor. We won't mention Dr. M's name. But in 2010, this is just for examining people and for insurance companies, not for treating them, not for helping save their lives like many of our good doctors do on a daily basis, not for curing cancer or healing injuries. This is just for examining people for insurance companies for litigation purpose, for lawsuits. In 2010, this is shocking, this doctor made $562,985 just for examining people. The most we see here in 2012, this doctor made $737,107, and this is verified by documentation provided by that doctor or by the company that hired him to do these exams, just for doing medical exams for litigation purposes. He doesn't have to carry any malpractice insurance. He has very limited expenses. He doesn't even have to have alcohol swabs for giving you a flu shot in his office.
All he has to do is look at the CAT scans, the MRIs, examine the claimant, and write a report.
What they look at is what's provided to them by the insurance company and or their attorneys. They claim to try to be thorough, but if you really look through in detail their reports of what they claim their findings are, sometimes there's things that are missing in there that are important.
So what's the solution? Having a independent, and I mean truly independent, neutral board of doctors that examine claimants?
Well, the system that we have, if it's effectively and properly used, administered, where you have a judge who's there to decide what's the truth, is pretty good. It goes back to Solomon. So having a neutral person, neutral I think is the word, make a determination as to who's right and who's wrong is a good system. It's just not the way that it's being implemented.
But the system as it's currently managed, and I'll use the term managed, is a product of politics. And the judges are appointed, and they're appointed through a political process, unfortunately, so they all seem to think one way. I mean, you can't try a case in some of these bureaus and win. Only 10% of the cases are won if they're tried.
Back in the early 1980s, they changed the law. The judges used to be civil servants. They didn't have to account to anybody for their decisions. They didn't have to worry that if they granted benefits that they wouldn't get reappointed. the law was changed, and believe it or not, it was changed by a Democratic governor. What they were thinking, I don't know. I guess they figured the Democrats were going to control the state forever, so let's give all the Democratic power to the Democratic judges. But it came to bite us in the rear end.
Okay, well, we got to live with it. Tell people how to get a hold of you, because we're going to have to take a break in a minute.
Again, Joel Alpert, 248-354-6400.
Will you come back again so we can discuss this some more?
I'd love to.
Thanks a lot for coming.
My
We'll
privilege.
take a break for a minute.
Are you in legal trouble? Are you in need of legal advice? Or just have general legal questions? Call 1-800-529-8721. That's 1-800-LAW-USA1. And watch Law Power Hour and get your questions answered by experienced attorneys who are experts in their field. That's Law Power Hour, hosted by Barry Keller, attorney at law. Saturdays at 10 a.m. here on WHPR, Detroit Live.
I'd like to welcome Reverend Deborah Carter. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Reverend Carter's from the Tabernacle Church.
Yes. Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church.
There we go. You're going to get right into it with me
Yes.
now, aren't you?
Of course.
We got a second program coming up there.
We're excited about it, yes.
Right. In November, we had our first program. Would you tell our listeners about the program that's coming up?
Certainly. In November, we had our first construction trade resource fair, and this is a three-phase program, and it is a community-based program. And we have the second phase coming up. The second phase involves skilled trades, soft skills, but most importantly, we have an interim program coming up in February, on February 15th, from 1 to 4 at Tabernacle at 2080 West Grand Boulevard. And at that one, this is our follow-up to the November program, where we had over 400 participants come, and out of those 400 participants, 238 received services, and out of those 238, 119 specifically, we're following up with them for expungement of their criminal records, arrearages on child support, driver's license restoration, and that's what we'll be following up with on February 15th.
Okay, so this is a safe zone. You can't get arrested if you come down here?
No, you can't get
Okay.
arrested.
We have assurance from law enforcement that if you come down here, no one's going to snatch you up, take you down to the friend of the court,
Correct,
and pick you up for driving without a license.
correct.
They're not going to arrest you because there's a warrant out for you if you're coming down to get help. We're going to be there to give you help to get you back on your feet.
That's correct.
This-
It's a free zone, no ICE, no law enforcement's going to pick you up. We're here to help our community get back on its feet.
Okay, so this is stage one.
Yes,
Stage one is let's get rid of the records, let's get rid of the problems. Stage two is coming up in April, correct?
in April 12th.
Come on now, let's hear about stage two.
Okay, stage 2 on April 12th is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's at Tabernacle again, 2080 West Grand Boulevard. And we will be accepting folks who need to come in and see lawyers, attorneys, skilled tradesmen who need to get their records cleaned up. What we're looking at is folks who may have driver's license issues, or who may have child support issues, or other issues that they need legal support for, but they can't afford.
Okay, we get to the stage two, though, after we've cleaned up the records, then we're going to do assessments, aren't we?
We're going to do assessments. We're going to have some workshops. We will have some soft skill workshops to help folks get ready for the workforce. We're going to make sure that those records that we gathered in the first phase, we're able to go back over and see what steps we're in. This is a journey that we're going on.
Okay, the journey is to clear up the records,
Yes,
deal with the skill sets, and then find meaningful positions.
Yes.
It's open to the entire community.
Correct.
If you're a veteran, it's open to you. If you're a veteran, if you're out of work, if you're homeless, you
If
should
you-
come down to the
right.
program, because there are people there that'll help you find places to live, get you back on your feet, and get you off the street. If you've got an addiction problem, don't be afraid to come down, because there are people who help you with your substance abuse problems. If you don't come down, you're hurting yourself.
Correct. And this is about the community. We have a lot of partners in this process that have a lot of resources that are available for all of those issues that you just raised. And all of these services are free of charge. We're looking at creating an opportunity in the community for people to not only get back on their feet, but to grow the community in a positive way, to impact homes and lives so that we have long-term results, not something that's just an overnight situation. It does take time, if you have any of these issues, to get yourself in a position where you would be eligible for employment. And then we are going to offer opportunities for those actual employment opportunities to happen.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
If I'm hitching a ride, if I'm walking, if I'm getting on the bus, or putting my foot on the gas, where am I supposed to go if I'm out of work and I want to get employed on February 15th?
You're supposed to go to Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church at the corner of West Grand Boulevard and Grand River on the old northwestern site. That's 2080 West Grand Boulevard, Detroit, Michigan, 48207.
What time am I supposed to be there?
You're supposed to be there no later than 1 o'clock, and we will be there from 1 to 4 p.m.
I feel wonderful. You told me it's 1 o'clock. I have a hearing at 11. I'm so proud that I can participate. Thank you for sharing.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate you having us on.
Okay,
All right.
we take a break just for a minute.
Thank you.
Are you in legal trouble? Are you in need of legal advice? Or just have general legal questions? Call 1-800-529-8721. That's 1-800-LAW-USA1. And watch Law Power Hour and get your questions answered by experienced attorneys who are experts in their field. That's Law Power Hour, hosted by Barry Keller, attorney at law. Saturdays at 10 a.m. here on WHPR Detroit Live.
In our last segment, I'm really excited about a benefit that's coming up at Charles Wright Museum next month. Odell Hines, thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
He is the visionary, at least the catalyst behind I Am New Detroit. Is that correct?
Yes.
And tell our audience who's with you today.
Oh, my beautiful wife, Cassandra Hines. And I'm going to let my board member introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Nanette DePriest, and I am proud to participate with the energy behind I Am New Detroit.
Well, thank you for coming. And I hear that energy in your voice, so tell everybody what's going on at the Charles Wright Museum, and when is it?
Well, on February 17th, which is just a couple of weeks away, there is going to be an event that will sponsor. It is a fundraising event, but it's actually a sponsoring event to provide housing for a veteran family that is in need. And with this, we're looking for the community to come and participate, because the veteran family that will be honored with this home is going to be presented the keys at the event.
Well, how did you start this project, Odell?
You know what? I'm going to let my beautiful wife, Cassandra, explain
Well,
it.
you know what? Very simple. Odell just woke up one day and decided that his vision was to do something to give back, by us being in real estate. So we wanted to buy blighted houses within the city, rehab them, give them to less fortunate families. So the benefit we had last year with the money raised, we bought a house. So we are very happy to bless someone with that house at this event, February the 17th.
So let me see if I understand it correctly. And this is for our audience, really important to understand. You're not in the business of rehabbing houses, buying them cheap and renting them. You're in the business of finding a house, fixing it up, and passing it on to a worthy person and their family.
Absolutely. By doing this, we're reducing blight from a specific neighborhood. We are increasing home ownership, and we're increasing self-worth. And when you have more homeowners on the block, you reduce crime because you have people that's going to look out for one another.
And how do you make a determination whom among those who apply is going to receive the house? What's
Now,
your criteria?
For this particular event, we did veterans. The reason we did that is because a veteran found out that we were doing this last year, and so they asked, could we, help them out because there's so many homeless vets out here. So they came to our office and, pleaded with us to please let this one be for vets. So we had it out there. We was even on Channel 4 News, letting people know how to apply. Go to our website, imnewdetroit.org. They submitted their applications, and their qualifications is they had to be low income. They had to be either active or retired veteran, and yesterday was the deadline for everyone to submit their application. So now we're going to be working with some different veteran organizations and the VA to go through those applications, and we're going to award that person on February 17th.
And what's the selection process?
Actually, the VA is helping us out with that, so we're just going to verify that they're a VA. This is a 3-bedroom home we're giving away, so no more than 6 people in the house. And the criteria for our finances is we're going strictly by the federal guidelines of what is low income. So depending on the amount of people you have in your family, you just got to, meet that the qualifications of what's considered for your house size.
Now I'm going to ask you the ugly question of the day. Suppose I'm the recipient. Can I flip that house next year?
No way, no way, no way.
I can't sell that house. What's to prevent me from selling the house?
You know what? And that's one of the stipulations we have, that for 2 years, you at least have to be in this house for 2 years. You have to keep this house up. You have to maintain this house. So that's one of the things we didn't want to do. We don't want to give you a house free and clear on February 17th, then February 18th, you run to get a mortgage and sell it. And, that's not the purpose of this. The purpose is to provide home ownership to someone who normally thought that they wouldn't be able to ever get there. So we're just trying to uplift that person, uplift that family, and that's the purpose of it. It is not for you to get ahead and profit from it. We want, to help someone that's in need.
So I can't mortgage it. I have to pay the taxes on it, correct?
That's correct.
I have to maintain it.
You have to maintain it.
So I have to be in a financial position to maintain it.
Absolutely.
So it's a turnkey situation. When
Pretty
I get to
much.
the house, put the key in the door, open it up, and everything is shipshape.
Everything's ship-shape.
Toilets are working, water heater,
Yes,
everything, heating, all in
yes.
order. Everything's in order. What a wonderful opportunity.
Yes. We're
Now-
excited.
Do you go around and check to make sure the person's maintaining it?
Yes, that is also a part of the program as well, that we will come in and make sure that they're maintaining the house, because we don't want our organization to have a black eye. We don't want the neighbors to say, hey, who are these people you put in this house and they're not cutting the grass and, the house is falling apart. This is making us look bad. So, we don't want a black eye. We want to continue this process.
So it's all in your agreement that if they are the recipient, do they have to have homeowner's insurance on the house?
Absolutely.
I have to ask you all these questions
No, you
because they're
should.
really important,
Yes.
So
Extremely.
pay the taxes, homeowner's insurance, maintain the property,
Yes.
keep it clean and
Keep
neat,
it clean and neat, inside and out.
and no more than 6 people living in the house.
Correct. And you can't run a business out of the house either.
Do you deed the house over, or do you deed it over in 2 years?
In 2 years, it's deeded over.
So during the 2-year period, how do you handle ownership of the property?
Well, it kind of be like a land contract situation, but of course we're deeding it over to them in 2 years, so there's really no major money in exchange. So that's how their name will be. It'll be land contract, so that way they'll still have some type of ownership in it. So just like a land contract, you have to follow the rules and regulation of that land contract, or you forfeit the house.
But they won't have to make any payments, will they?
Correct.
No payments.
Correct, no
But
payments.
what they do have to do, they actually have to be in a financial position where they actually got to put money in escrow. You know, almost like a mortgage company, when they put money in escrow for your taxes and insurance and water. So we're making them put their money in escrow, so we setting them up for success. So even after we give them the house, they'll still already be in a habit of paying their taxes, water, and insurance.
So this is a learning experience at the same
Absolutely.
time.
Yes.
Because, that's the biggest failure that people have when they get a gift of a house.
Right.
That unfortunately, because they've been homeless, they don't know how to manage.
They don't know how to manage, right,
So
correct.
now you're teaching them how to manage.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Tell us when the event is, how much it costs for a ticket. Let's hear about that.
Oh, the event is February 17th at the beautiful Charles Wright Museum. Tickets right now, the early bird tickets, we still have a few more early bird tickets for $60. But that ticket includes, it includes valet. It includes some of the best restaurants in the city. We do what is called the Taste of Detroit, where we have these restaurants and caterers where they set up and they have food that everybody can sample. So it's a fantastic event. It includes co-check, entertainment. It's awesome.
And what time is it?
From 8 to 12.
And tickets can be bought on iamnewdetroit.org. So if you want to become a sponsor, make a donation, or purchase tickets, please check out our website, iamnewdetroit.org.
Yes.
Okay, we'll see you there.
See you there.
All right.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks so
Thank you
much.
for having us.
All right.
We'll see you next week on Law Power Hour.